Hello summoners and welcome back to Mobalytics, where today we have the patch 8.24b tier list Q&A video. As always, we'll take the questions from YouTube first. Let's start off with a question from Rogue Bunny. So why is Wukong S tier in mid and top? He was considered one of the worst champions in the game not too long ago after his nerfs, and many challenger Wukong mains have dropped to Masters/D1 as a direct result of it. I think for Wukong, it sums up in a couple of points. Number one is that the rune stat changes are fantastic for that champion. Being able to go AD, and then into your resistances means that you are able to get the exact stats you want, and your laning phase gets significantly stronger because of that. The other big thing is that because of the rune stat changes, you can actually go Triumph into coup de grace in the precision tree without wasting any attack speed. You get the exact runes and the exact stats that you want, meaning that he becomes much stronger. You don't necessarily have to waste attack speed in precision tree because you don't actually need it because of the attack speed buff that your E gives you, and Riot recently, as you even mentioned in your comment, gave you a level 1 attack speed buff not too long ago. Wukong thrives in the chaos of solo queue, and one thing to note is that this is not for challenger elo. We did not say that Wukong is S tier in mid and top for anything but low elo. I believe even in top lane he's just B tier for high elo, and he's not even on the mid lane tier list for high elo. Wukong is the prototypical, amazing assassin, carry, damage-oriented champion that can climb you out of bronze, silver, gold, and platinum. He does everything you need him to do in order to help you climb the ladder and to get to diamond elo. Maybe after that, sure, you're going to struggle because you're going to get abused by challenger Riven players, challenger Fiora players, challenger Jace players. Of course you're going to get abused. But do you really think you're going to get abused in silver elo for playing Wukong? Probably not, right? I think that he teamfights very well, and that's why he's good in low elo. We actually got 2 questions this week about a bad tier list. Josh K said, I wouldn't mind seeing a worst champs tier list, and Seb16120 said, can you add a don't play it tier, a list of champions which are unplayable in the current patch? This is a pretty funny idea to me, and because of the number of questions, I'm not even sure if it's a joke or you guys want something serious here or if you think it'd be entertaining. First off, before I even get into the question, let me know what you think in the comment section about this. But regardless, the interesting thing about this kind of tier list or this kind of philosophy is that if there were ever a time to do it, now would not be the time. In League's history, there were historically champions that were just troll. They were just terrible champions. There was a list of maybe 5 to 10 champions that were just pathetically bad, just awful. But that's not really the case anymore. There's not really the likes of the old Aatrox at one point. There's not really the likes of Evelynn, the likes of Volibear or Corki. Honestly, I think Volibear, Corki, and maybe Kalista would be the worst champions for solo queue, but even all 3 of those champions can work and could make their way into C tier. Kalista is just buggy. Kalista is just a champion that has a couple of bugs with her auto attacks and her passive and just feels weird to play, but realistically she can still work. Riot has done a fantastic job of removing D and F tier champions. I would say that almost every champion in some role is going to be C tier, which is why we probably wouldn't make a tier list like this, but it's funny regardless. It's interesting to me. Who would you guys say in the comment section down below? Who would you say is the worst champion in the game? I would say because of her bugs it is Kalista, or maybe Corki, but even then, again, I think that they're not that bad. Ate said, hello, I have a question. What do you think about Jhin in high elo and low elo? Honestly, Jhin is a champion that is pretty good, and you see him on our tier list for a reason, but the reason he is not S tier is because of consistency problems. Champions such as Jhin and Jinx in the current meta do struggle with this problem of consistency. You see a lot of these marksmen or ADCs just struggling to fit into all compositions. With Jhin and Jinx, champions like that, they can actually blow up the game, stomp the game, and totally snowball and do well, but that is consistently reliant and hard to do on your team composition and how good your team is versus the enemy team, and can they even peel you. Champions like Draven or Yasuo or Lucian bot lane have a much easier time having control and agency over the game by themselves and in and of themselves, but champions like Jhin, Jinx, and even Tristana and Caitlyn, while can be pretty good, do require a team built around them. Not necessarily a fantastic team, you don't need to be carried, but you do need a team composition that works with you, not against you. We had a question from Valkynier talking about the junglers with the Tiamat nerf, maybe wanting to try the Futures Market rune. Okay, now this is pretty interesting. Typically for junglers, you're not going Inspiration secondary. Usually you would go Sorcery secondary with something like Celerity Water Walking or Absolute Focus Water Walking, even Nimbus Cloak. But because of the changes, maybe you could go on something like Shaco instead of what Absolute Focus Gathering Storm or Absolute Focus Water Walking, which is usually what Shaco would go. Maybe you could go Stopwatch Futures Market. That's interesting. I think that it's probably not amazing, but in specific situations or for champions that crutch on the Tiamat, who absolutely crutch on Tiamat, maybe for Shaco instead of Precision or Sorcery secondary, you could try that. I think it's worth a go. Regardless, I think it's worth trying, and then maybe you could report back to us and leave another comment. Interesting nonetheless. I'd like to see how this plays out, but thanks for the idea. I think I'll give it a try. We had a question from Rev Video saying, hey, why is LeBlanc not even on the high elo tier list? She's a pretty good pick, or not? For LeBlanc, it's not just the nerfs that she got on her W recently, it has a lot more to do as well with the nerfs to Time Warp Tonic, which she was a big abuser of, on top of that being the meta changes and the meta shifts, with more champions in the game realizing there's a lot of burst, more people taking MR in their runes, more people taking Nullifying Orb, more people playing Galio and Cassiopeia and Lissandra mid. There's a lot of bad matchups for LeBlanc at the moment, even in high elo, and because of the nature of her kit being so reliant on snowballing, it's hard to recommend her for climbing for the future. I do think that if you're a LeBlanc one trick, she's very playable and is still pretty good, but realistically for climbing, I just don't think she's there right now. But maybe after the new year for January, we can make a video on her, not only talking about why to play her, but how good she is in the current moment. So maybe we'll talk about her later, at a later date. And our last question this week coming from Instagram from Pietro Aneta saying, why in low elo did Draven move to B tier? For low elo players, Draven moved to B tier because he is not as oppressive as he was before because of all of the mages and counter picks you can pick in the bottom lane. Realistically, for low elo Dravens, they're probably going to get hit by a lot of skill shots. They're probably not going to be able to outplay 1v2s in the same way that high elo ones will. He is still a great champion, and by no means are we saying that he is not good enough to climb, just the difference being that he is going to have a harder time climbing and carrying in lower elo games unless you're good at him. If you're smurfing still, he's fantastic, but it's just about the scope of the players. It's just about judging and objectively saying, will a silver player have the same success as a high elo player on Draven, meaning relatively to the rank, so S tier and S tier for both? Probably not. Anyway, this has been the Mobalytics patch 8.24b video tier list Q&A. Make sure you leave your questions in the comment section down below. I'll try to answer them the best I can over the holiday season, so make sure you do that. Check out the product at mobalytics.gg, and we'll see you next time.